2 Kings chapter 23. The king acted immediately, assembling all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem. Then the king proceeded to the temple of God, bringing everyone in his train, priests and prophets and people ranging from the famous to the unknown. Then he read out publicly everything written in the book of the covenant that was found in the temple of God. The king stood by the pillar and before God solemnly committed them all to the covenant, to follow God believingly and obediently, to follow his instructions, heart and soul, on what to believe and do, to put into practice the entire covenant, all that was written in the book. The people stood in affirmation. Their commitment was unanimous. Then the king ordered Hilkiah the high priest, his associate priest, and the temple sentries to clean house, to get rid of everything in the temple of God that had been made for worshipping Baal and Asherah and the cosmic powers. He had them burned outside Jerusalem in the field of Kidron, and then disposed of the ashes in Bethel. He fired the pagan priests who the kings of Judah had hired to supervise the local sex and religion shrines in the towns of Judah and neighbourhoods of Jerusalem. In a stroke, he swept the country clean of the polluting stench of the round-the-clock worship of Baal, sun and moon, stars, and the so-called cosmic powers. He took the obscene phallic Asherah-pole from the temple of God to the Valley of Kidron outside Jerusalem, burned it up, then ground up the ashes and scattered them in the cemetery. He tore out the rooms of the male sacred prostitutes that had been set up in the temple of God. Women also used these rooms for weaving for Asherah. He swept the outlying towns of Judah clean of priests and smashed the sex and religion shrines where they worked their trade from one end of the country to the other, all the way from Geba to Beersheba. He smashed the sex and religion shrines that had been set up just to the left of the city gates for the private use of Joshua, the city mayor. Even though these sex and religion priests did not defile the altar in the temple itself, they were part of the general priestly corruption and had to go. Then Josiah demolished the Topheth, the iron furnace griddle set up in the Valley of Ben Hinnom for sacrificing children in the fire. No longer could anyone burn son or daughter to the god Molech. He hauled off the horse statues honouring the sun god that the kings of Judah had set up near the entrance to the temple. They were in the courtyard next to the office of Nathan-Melech, the warden. He burned up the sun-chariots as so much rubbish. The king smashed all the altars to smithereens. The altar of the roof shrine of Ahaz, the various altars the kings of Judah had made, the altars of Manasseh that littered the courtyard of the temple. He smashed them all, pulverized the fragments, and scattered their dust in the Valley of Kidron. The king proceeded to make a clean sweep of all the sex and religion shrines that had proliferated east of Jerusalem on the south slope of Abomination Hill, the ones King Solomon of Israel had built to the obscene Sidonian sex goddess Ashtaroth, to Chemosh, the dirty old god of the Moabites, to Milcom, the depraved god of the Ammonites. He tore apart the altars, chopped down the phallic Asherah-poles, and scattered old bones over the sites. Next, he took care of the altar at the shrine in Bethel that Jeroboam son of Nebat had built, the same Jeroboam who had led Israel into a life of sin. He tore apart the altar, burned down the shrine, leaving it in ashes, and then lit fire to the phallic Asherah-pole. As Josiah looked over the scene, he noticed the tombs on the hillside. He ordered the bones removed from the tombs and had them cremated on the ruined altars, desacralizing the evil altars. This was a fulfillment of the word of God spoken by the holy man years before, when Jeroboam had stood by the altar at the sacred convocation. Then the king said, "At that memorial stone, whose is that?" The men from the city said, "That's the grave of the holy man who spoke the message against the altar of Bethel that you have just fulfilled." Josiah said, "Don't trouble his bones." So they left his bones undisturbed, along with the bones of the prophet from Samaria. But Josiah hadn't finished. He now moved through all the towns of Samaria, where the kings of Israel had built neighborhood sex and religion shrines that had so angered God. He turned the shrines down and left them in ruins, just as at Bethel. He killed all the priests who had conducted the sacrifices and cremated them on their own altars, thus desacralizing the altars. Only then did Josiah return to Jerusalem. The king now commanded the people, "Celebrate the Passover to God, your God, exactly as directed in this book of the covenant." This commanded Passover has not been celebrated since the days that the judges judged Israel. None of the kings of Israel of Judah had celebrated it. But in the 18th year of the rule of the king of Josiah, this very Passover was celebrated to God in Jerusalem. Josiah scrubbed the place clean and trashed spirit mediums, sorcerers, domestic gods and carved figures, all the vast accumulation of foul and obscene relics and images on display everywhere you looked in Judah and Jerusalem. Josiah did this in obedience to the words of God's revelation written in the book that Hilkiah the priest found in the temple of God. There was no king to compare with Josiah, neither before nor after, a king who turned in total and repentant obedience to God, heart and mind and strength, following the instructions revealed to and written by Moses. The world would never again see a king like Josiah. But despite Josiah, God's hot anger did not cool. The raging anger ignited by Manasseh burned unchecked, and God, not swerving in his judgment, gave sentence. "I'll remove Judah from my presence in the same way I removed Israel. I'll turn my back on this city, Jerusalem, that I chose, and even from this temple of which I said my name lives here." The rest of the life and times of Josiah is written in the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah. Josiah's death came about when Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, marched out to join forces with the king of Assyria at the Euphrates River. When King Josiah intercepted him at the plain of Megiddo, Necho killed him. Josiah's servant took his body in a chariot, returned him to Jerusalem, and buried him in his own tomb. By popular choice, Jehoiahaz, son of Josiah, was anointed and succeeded his father as king. Jehoiahaz was 23 years old when he began to rule. He was king in Jerusalem for a mere 3 months. His mother's name was Hamutal, daughter of Jeremiah. She came from Libnah. In God's opinion, he was an evil king, reverting to the evil ways of his ancestors. Pharaoh Necho captured Jehoiahaz in Riblah, in the country of Hamath, and put him in chains, preventing him from ruling in Jerusalem. He demanded that Judah pay tribute of nearly 4 tons of silver and 75 pounds of gold. Then Pharaoh Necho made Eliakim, son of Josiah, the successor of Josiah, but changed his name to Jehoiakim. Jehoiahaz was carted off to Egypt and eventually died there. Meanwhile, Jehoiakim, like a good puppet, dutifully paid out the silver and gold demanded by Pharaoh. He scraped up the money by gouging the people, making everyone pay an accessed tax. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to rule. He was king for 11 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jebedah, daughter of Pedaiah. She had come from Rumah. In God's opinion, he was an evil king, picking up on the evil ways of his ancestors.